in Job chapter 6. Job 6, looking at, or beginning in verse 14, I believe is where we left off last week. So this is Job's first response to Eliphaz. And Eliphaz, of course, spoke in chapters 4 and 5. Job broke the silence in 3. Eliphaz responds in 4 and 5. And now Job is responding to him in chapters 6 and 7. So let me just read the first 13 verses we've already been through, and then we will move into the next section. Oh, that my vexation, then Job answered and said, oh, that my vexation were weighed and all my calamity laid in the balances, for then it would be heavier than the sand of the sea. Therefore my words have been rash. And so, of course, he's just explaining the extenuating circumstances, of course, have him speaking a little more frankly than he normally would. For the arrows of the Almighty are in me, my spirit drinks their poison, the terrors of God are arrayed against me. And so he feels as if God is attacking him. Does the wild donkey bray when he has grass, or the ox low over his fodder? Can that which is tasteless be eaten without salt? Or is there any taste in the juice of the mallow? My appetite refuses to touch them, and they are food. They are as food that is loathsome to me. And so the basic notion is if he weren't suffering, he wouldn't be doing it and talking about it this way. Verse 8, oh, that I may have my request and that God would fulfill my hope, that it would please God to crush me and he would let loose his hand and cut me off. This would be my comfort. I would even exult in pain unsparing, for I have not denied the words of the Holy One. What is my strength that I should wait, and what is my end that I should be patient? Is my strength the strength of stones, or is my flesh bronze? Have I any help in me when resource is driven from me? And so he's wanting God to take his life. He's wanting God to, in his way of thinking anyway, finish the job he started. He started attacking him, and so at least if he dies, he can have some relief from that suffering that he feels. And of course, that's a continuation of what he said in chapter 3 when he broke the silence. So, of course, with the outline on the screen, I think chapter 6, he's talking with the friends. In chapter 7, he kind of turns and addresses God in the midst of some of these struggles as well. So remember, he is a patriarch. He is used to, we don't know exactly what that looked like, certainly, but he is used to conversing with God on what seems to be a pretty regular basis. And the fact that that is not happening now, well, that hurts him, okay? The way any close companionship that we share with someone and then now we don't talk anymore, that's a void. And certainly when it's your God, that's just earth-shattering, especially for Job, who, for him, God is everything. And so the fact that his everything isn't talking to him, nothing will be right until that's fixed. Okay, so let's continue on. Somebody read for us, let's do 14 through 23. Job 6, 14 to 23. Okay. Either one, go ahead. All right. So he's now going to focus in specifically on their friendship. And so he says, he who withholds kindness from a friend forsakes the fear of the Almighty. Now, in the Proverbs, Solomon will often say, do not forsake your father's friend. Okay? And that's the idea of friendships. And still to this day, in cultures that still practice a lot of the things that you see in biblical times, friendship is not like, it's not like Tom and Huck, signing an oath in blood and cutting their finger, and it's far more serious. And it's not like us making a pinky promise that we're going to be BFFs, okay? Friendship is very, very serious, and it has more implications than just, okay, I'm going to be your friend and I'll always be there to kind of support you in a way. It is much heavier than that. For an example, in 1 Samuel chapter 20, when David is being pursued by Saul, he enters into a covenant with Jonathan. And basically the covenant says, excuse me. And so basically the covenant says that when David takes over, he will not, excuse me, he will not kill the family of Jonathan or kill Jonathan himself if Jonathan is already dead. And further, that he will take care of Jonathan's family. And that is later fulfilled in 2 Samuel chapter 9 when he goes and gets Mephibosheth, the lame son of Jonathan, and takes care of him. And so friendship had the idea of, if anything happens to you, your family is fine. I've got them. I will take care of them. I'll provide for them. I'll do whatever it takes. And so he's reminding them of that, because what they're doing is anything, it's certainly not friendship. And so friendship is taken very seriously at a high level, and that's why he says, he who forsakes the kindness or withholds kindness from a friend forsakes the fear of the Almighty. Like it's attached to God and what it means to have an oath before God and the seriousness that's involved with that. So he goes on to compare them then to what is called a wadi. And I'm terrible at spelling, but I think it's W-A-D-D-I. A wadi is like in some translations I think have that. I don't know which ones everyone is carrying, but a wadi is like a seasonal stream. It receives snow. As the snow melts, the stream will flow. Sometimes it will fill in with snow, but eventually, at certain points in the year, it's going to dry up. Okay? So what could be a temporary water source is not a permanent water source. And so you see the image that he's painting is, we would say you're a fair weather friend. Right? You're there when it's good, but you're not there when it's bad. And so that's why he compares them then to being as treacherous as a torrent bed as torrential streams pass away. And so basically he's accusing them of, when things were going great, you wanted to be my friend, but now that things aren't going great, you don't want to act friendly anymore. Which I think Job has had this suspicion all along, because it continues to come up in these speeches. I think he has this suspicion that his friends are friends with him because of who he is and what he has, not because he's a good man. Okay? And unfortunately, there are people that are that way. They will befriend you, and they view you as a means to an end, whether they say it, and even whether they think like that in their minds, they still view it that way. It's just, you're someone to be used. Okay, so it's just like putting something in the back pocket. And so I'm saving you for when I need you. I'll just have this card in my back pocket to play. So he goes on to continue the illustration. He says, which are dark with ice, where the snow hides itself. Of course, it would fill in. And when they melt, they disappear. When it is hot, they vanish from their place. It dries up in the heat of the day. The caravans, of course, traveling caravans or trading caravans, turn aside from their course, and they go up into the waste and perish. Okay, that is, caravans, wadis are temporary. And so if you're not familiar with the region, you may not know if it's a wadi or not. And so you may think it's a permanent stream. And so you go by there one time and you find it. And so you go back, when you go back the second time, you think, hey, I got this figured out. I'm going, okay? It's like driving anywhere in the state of Arkansas, okay? You ain't got it figured out, I promise you, okay? I hate that state. In the most Christian way possible, I hate that state. It all looks the same. Everything looks the same. But they assume that it's going to be there when they need it the next time. And so they're confident and they think, yeah, I got this. And then they get there and it's nothing. It's dried up. And so that's why he says, then the caravans of Tema look, and the travelers from Sheba hope. They are ashamed because they were confident. They come there and are disappointed. So Tema is a city in northwest Arabia, a trade city, and Sheba is southwest Arabia. And so he's just kind of using images from multiple directions. So they end up being embarrassed, of course, and then much worse than being embarrassed, they can perish because of it. It says, for you have now become nothing. You see my calamity and are afraid. You have this ability to look at what's happening to me and only think of yourself. That's a problem. Sometimes when we're talking about, when we talk about grief, there's a term you've probably heard before, talking about hijacking someone's grief. Everybody's tragedy is your tragedy, except it isn't. But you act that way, right? It's the most tragic thing in the world, and you know we become so overly distraught that attention is turned to us who were not directly affected by the tragedy. The people directly affected by the tragedy, attention where it should be focused on them is turned away to someone else who is trying to draw that attention. Okay? And it's an important thing to remember. And I don't think people do it intentionally, and I don't think they, sit down and think, hey, I'm going to hijack this. But ultimately, we do need to ask ourselves that question. If we're hijacking grief, are we using it as an excuse to make this about myself? So, anyway, that's the first thing he says. But their fear also might be something else. So they see it happening to Job, and the only thing they can think about is, what if this happens to me? But it could be something else. Mitchell, you talked about this the other day at the hospital. You know how when a check comes, certain people get dinosaur arms? They can't reach. The check's in the middle of the table and their hands are here. They don't know how to extend that arm and pull the check in and pay. They're afraid that somebody might ask them to help. That's what Job says. He said, have I said, make me a gift, or from your wealth offer a bribe for me, or deliver me from the adversary's hand, or redeem me from the hand of the ruthless? Look, y'all are acting like I'm over here asking you for money. I'm asking you to bail me out, to take money from yourselves and to hand it over to me to bail me out. Job said, I don't want your money. I hadn't asked for it. I haven't even hinted at it. Because ultimately, when you lose everything, including your children, and your wife all but deserts you, the last thing you're worried about is money. Who cares? Okay? Who cares? We had to have this discussion the other night with the boys talking about wealth and riches. I don't remember the whole circumstances, but basically we had to introduce them to the idea that you're not truly wealthy until you have something money can't buy. That's where wealth comes, okay? Money, they make it all the time. You can lose every bit of it, and you can make every bit of it back times 10. But until you got something that money can't buy, like being in a happy and loving marriage, as Solomon says at the end of the Song of Solomon, right? If a man were to offer all of his house for love, it would utterly be contemned. They would laugh at him. No, you can't buy me loving you. And so there's an issue that exists between them. And what we've already seen, and we'll see it later when we get into 29 and 30 and 31, is that was Job wealthy? You better believe it. But Job also said what? Who was the widow that didn't eat at my table? Who was the orphan that wasn't warmed by the fleece of my sheep? He constantly took care of people. He didn't keep an account running that said, I've invested so much in this person and this person and this person. The bottom line is somebody is in need. I have the ability to do it. I do it. And so you contrast his attitude toward taking care of everybody that comes across him versus his friends who are afraid that their friend might ask them for a few dollars, which, by the way, he has zero intention of doing that. So it tells them, listen, the statement is true. When things start going south, you'll find out who's really your friend. When the fire starts and the shooting starts and everybody starts piling on, you'll find out who legitimately loves you and respects you. So, then he moves to this statement. He says, teach me and I will be silent. Make me to understand how I've gone astray. How forceful are upright words. But what does reproof from you reprove? Do you think that you can reprove words when the speech of a despairing man is wind? You can even cast lots over the fatherless and bargain over your friend. So Job basically says, look, Eliphaz, I'm not convinced by what you said. You said that I'm suffering, therefore I must have done something wrong. But you still haven't called it to hand yet. What have I done wrong? Make me understand what I did that was wrong. It's easy to make the claim, you're suffering, you must have done something wrong. You're going to have to tell me what I did that was wrong. So, I mean, countless things here, but one of the lessons is, look, Job is not willing to cop to something he didn't do. There is nothing wrong with defending yourself when you're innocent. Now, I'm not saying it's going to do any good. It doesn't do any good with him. But he did nothing wrong when he said, hey, show me what I've done. Let's see it. Then he goes on to say, how forceful are upright words, but what does reproof from you reprove? That is, words that are well argued. Someone who can show me the evidence, can show me how I've gone wrong. Listen, Job is showing that he is what I consider to be a person of integrity. A person of integrity, listen, somebody comes to you and says, hey, you were wrong in what you did. The person of integrity says, well, you won't get an argument from me that I've done plenty of things wrong, but you're going to have to specify. Right? A lot of times we're so quick to defend ourselves, like, well, I am stunned that people do not believe that they do wrong. Like, I think a person has to be living in like a parallel universe to think that. How do you not believe you do something wrong? Or that you think something that is wrong, or you believe something that is wrong. Okay? Job is showing the sense of integrity. He's not the guy that says, nope, I'm right. I'm always right. That's not who we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be people who look inward and seriously consider, and as a matter of fact, according to the psalmist, pray that God would show us the ways in which we are wrong. Help us to see where we are wrong. Help us to make right our wrongs. Do you think that, he says in verse 26, do you think you can reprove words when the speech of a despairing man is wind? You're just walking right over me. You cast lots over the fatherless and bargain over your friend. I mean, you have no regard for context or the situation or what is happening. I'm sitting here suffering, and you want to sit here and have an argument with me and tell me that I must have done something wrong. That's about the equivalent of shooting dice to see which orphan you get to take home to be your slave. You're heartless. You're heartless. And here's the thing, okay? Just for a second, take a time out. Let's assume for just a second that Job has done something to deserve this. Let's assume that for just a second. When a person realizes that they've done something wrong, it's not our job to back up, to hit the brakes, throw it in reverse, and back over them again and run over them again. So even if Job has done something, they're still handling him in a way that's completely inappropriate. A lot of times when people come and they're seeking help in general, I would say 99.9% of the time, the person sitting down across from me knows that they've done something that is wrong. Otherwise, they wouldn't be sitting across from me wanting to talk about it. So why would I spend and waste and mistreat a person saying, all right, now I'm fixing to beat you over the head and tell you just how wrong you were? You already know that. And we can't change that. That has happened. But we can change what we do next. And so when you look at the friends, even if their premise is right, the way they go about it is completely wrong. So he says in verse 28, he says, "But now be pleased to look at me, for I will not lie to your face. Please turn, let no injustice be done. Turn now, my vindication is at stake. Is there any injustice on my tongue? Cannot my palate discern the cause of calamity?" In essence, Job says, okay, unless y'all think I'm just grandstanding here, look me in the eye when I tell you this. I've done nothing wrong. Can't my palate discern the cause of calamity? That is, the palate of the tongue, the taste. How it can discern taste. You think I don't know the difference between right and wrong? I know the difference between right and wrong, and I'm telling you, I haven't done anything wrong not to deserve this. Now, he does not claim that he is sinless or sinlessly perfect. He never says that. Chapter 31, he says that if I had hidden my sins as Adam did, then I would have deserved this. But I wasn't one who hid my sins. I confessed my sins. So, he then turns his attention toward God. And he says, has not man a hard service on earth, and are not his days like the days of a hired hand? Like a slave who longs for the shadow, and like a hired hand who looks for his wages. So I am allotted months of emptiness, and nights of misery are appointed to me. Let's pause there for a second. So in general, what he's saying is, man, life on earth can be very difficult. That's part of living in a fallen world. Are not his days like the days of a hired hand? Up early, work hard, to bed late. Like a slave who longs for the shadow. Why do you long for a shadow? Come on, y'all worked on a farm. It's cooler. Right? I'll tell you something. Mississippi heat in August, on top of a roof, putting felt paper down. You'll pop that head up over that ridge every chance you get to let a cool breeze fly over the top and hit you in the face. And that's not even shade. That's just a little bit of relief. I have more than once laid my head on a cold slab on a lunch break. That's how when you're in that difficult moment, when you're starting to kind of wear down a little bit, you start thinking about your watch and thinking, yeah, I've got about an hour until lunch. And it's really more of the relief than it is the eating part. Okay? So that's what he says. And like a hired hand who looks for his wages, this is dealing with the individuals who would work for daily wages, the poor who would be hired. For an example, Matthew 20, when Jesus tells the parable of the laborers in the vineyard, the poorest of the people would congregate in the city square, and then people with their farms, they would go out and hire them out for the day. And the law, according to the law of Moses, when you hired a day laborer, at the end of the day, you owed him his money that day. Okay? And so that's what he's talking about. So he says, I am allotted months of emptiness, and nights of misery are appointed to me. When I lie down, when shall I arise? But the night is long, and I am full of tossing till the dawn. Isn't that interesting about suffering? You're kind of counting down the hours in the day to where you don't have to think about or feel what's going on, and then you think, man, if I can just make it to bedtime. And then you get to bedtime, and it's like, well, nothing here. I'm just going to toss and turn and turn and toss and toss and turn. So he feels like he can't get anywhere. Look, if during the daytime he can't get any relief, and he thinks the nighttime is going to give him relief, and he doesn't get it there, he just keeps tossing and turning, he feels trapped because he can't go anywhere to get relief. And listen, that's not just physical suffering, by the way. That's mental, emotional, spiritual suffering. You don't feel like you can go anywhere to get relief. You feel stuck. You don't see a way out. The problem is so big. You see, here's the thing about problems. When you got one, this is what it's like. You can't see anything else. And that's why it's important that you have people you can talk to who can look at you and go, zoom out a little bit. Let me help you see clearly. Let me help you get your eyes off of this thing that just dominates you. And let's see if we can see something else. And see if we can infuse some hope into the situation that some things can change and get better. So, then in verse 5 he says, my flesh is clothed with worms and dirt. My skin hardens, then breaks out afresh. My days are swifter than a weaver's shuttle and come to their end without hope. And so, of course, you remember he's sitting in the ash heap, the garbage dump, and that's where he's sleeping. And so, obviously, if you fall asleep in a garbage dump, don't be surprised. And he has open wounds. What do you have in garbage dumps? Worms, maggots. People are like, that's gross. Yeah, it is. It is. Then my skin hardens, so those boils that he's scraping, they harden up, they cover back over, and then they break out afresh. So it's like you finally get one of them to kind of give you some relief and break loose, but you're asleep in the night and you roll over and okay? So the only, I've never had anything even resembles that. The only thing I can think about doing that is rolling in the bed and feeling that tinge is, I guess I was a junior in high school. We were redoing a house, and it had old rock wool insulation in it, fiberglass. And the guy that was demoing it with me was not known for delicate deconstruction. So he would just take the sledgehammer and started beating the ceilings down, the sheetrock down, and it just got everywhere. And for 2 and 3 weeks afterward, I'd be laying in my bed at night, and I'd roll, and a piece of fiberglass was in my skin, and it's just, you think you're going to sleep, and then you feel it, and ooh. That's what Job, on a much higher and intense level, I think I'm going to get the relief. Something's starting to go my way, and ooh. So then he concludes by saying, my days are swifter than a weaver's shuttle. Talking about taking the yarn and all the different things and weaving it, and the shuttle that moves back and forth with speed. And they come to their end without hope. That's the ironic thing. I think I've got a statement here about Ash that's very good. It says, one of the paradoxes of suffering is that it can be at the same time a slow pain and a fast running away of life itself. It can seem so long and yet so short, and so short and yet so long. It messes with your rhythms. And that's what Job is feeling. So, as Brother Cates used to say to us all the time when we left off in the middle of a Job speech, poor old Brother Job. He's just not doing well. But anyway, any questions or anything before we're... All right, we'll pick up there in verse 7, hopefully next week.